Hello, welcome. Today we are ranking books written by none other than V.E. Schwab. If you watched a few of my other videos, you would know that V.E. Schwab is one of my favorite authors. The way that they command language and the way that they portray a story through the word choice and the setting and the world building is phenomenal, and there's a reason why she is one of my favorite authors. Previously, I've ranked the books of Sarah J. Maas, and so today I thought it would be fun to do it for V.E. Schwab, another one of my auto-buy authors. If you are new here, hi, my name is Emma, and it is so nice to have you, and let's jump into the video. So in total, I think I have read 12 of V.E. Schwab's books. I read some of her books for the first time, I want to say back in 2019. So it's been like a 6-year love affair between me and V.E. Schwab. And I am so stoked to be doing this because I know that she has a bunch more books coming out very, very soon. Similar to how I did this when ranking Sarah J. Maas books, these are all my own opinions, and I am strictly going off the ranking based on what I gave it on Goodreads at the time that I read it. I'm sure if I went back through and actually looked through all my rankings, I would definitely move some books around, but we're going to stay true to how I felt after I read each book. And then my second disclaimer that I have to give is when I was looking through my Goodreads for the rankings, there are some books that I didn't end up ranking. So there are a few of them on here that as I took the time to kind of think about the books and unpack it all, I have assigned them a rating post-reading. So enough of the disclaimers, let's get started. So book number 12 is The Unbound by V.E. Schwab. This book I gave 3 stars. It was one of the ones that I didn't rank when I finished reading it, but looking back on it, I'm giving it 3 stars. It is the second book in the Archive series, which I think she wrote under Victoria Schwab instead of V.E. Schwab, which typically means for her that it's a young adult book versus a new adult or an adult book. And this book was really fascinating to me to read just because the premise is so cool. If I'm remembering correctly, it is basically the souls of the dead get housed in this library, and you have to have guardians to make sure that they stay housed in their chamber, whatever it's called. And basically we follow our main character, who is one of the guardians there, and stuff goes crazy, okay? The premise of the story was really creative and really cool and nothing like I'd ever read before, and that's initially what attracted me to it. I think this series was actually the first that I read by Victoria Schwab, so it does hold a special place in my heart. It's really cool and really creative, and you will see that in all of V.E. Schwab's work. Her mind and her creativity and her ability to craft unique worlds is second to none. The next book on this list is Vengeful. Vengeful, I also didn't give a rating after I finished it, but thinking about it now, I would give it 3 stars. Vengeful is the second book in the Vicious series. There's Vicious, Vengeful, and then Victorious, which I believe is coming out in 2026, and I'm excited for that one. I'll talk about the story a little bit more once I get to Vicious on this list, but this second book in the series kicked off with a new character, and it kind of threw me for a loop when I first picked it up. It felt very disconnected from the 2 initial characters we read about throughout the whole first book. And so her being added and getting her perspective was just, it was an adjustment to say the least. And I think I was expecting a little bit differently than what I got out of Vengeful, so it falls at 3 stars. And like I said, Victorious comes out next year, and I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait for the final installment. The story is very, very cool, but I'll talk about that more once I get to Vicious. Next book I have on here is Gallant. I gave Gallant 3.5 stars, and similarly, this was a book that I didn't rank after I read it, which seems to be a theme and seems to be telling me that I should start doing that. I think I've gotten better, but Gallant, I want to say I read 4 or 5 years ago, so I wasn't as actively leaving Goodreads reviews. Gallant is a cool story because Victoria Schwab writes a story about a main character who is nonverbal. And character relationships and dialogue are so important and so crucial. And so she had to employ all of the other senses in order to have this character communicate and communicate well. I think I listened to a interview by her where she talked about this, and she specifically said, like, it was such a challenge because she had to lean on the other senses, like what the character was hearing or seeing or smelling or touching. And it's just fascinating to think about the challenge it would have been to write Gallant and to see it finished. You can just tell how much love and effort went into doing it, and it's a phenomenal story, and it has great representation for those who might also be nonverbal or who have nonverbal family members or friends. And it was very, very cool to read. It was not my favorite by her, just the plotline itself I didn't love as much as some of the other ones, but the concept and the uniqueness of the main character is awesome. Book number 9, I want to say I actually own, and it is A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the A Darker Shade of Magic series. This trilogy follows magicians who have the ability to basically transport themselves between 4 different types of London. There's Red London, Black London, White London, and Grey London. We follow Kel, and he works within the palace of Red London, and he gets himself in some sticky situations. The world of this is so, so cool and so immersive, and I really, really enjoyed it. I remember when I first picked this up, I knew that I was really gonna like it, and I think that was probably a little bit to my detriment because I had really, really high expectations, but I still did really love it. The Gathering of Shadows, so the second book, I gave 3.5 stars. It is my least favorite of the trilogy. The first book actually wraps up so well, and then this book I think kind of struggled to draw me in and connect me to the events that happened in this book from the previous book's events. I just feel like that transition made it so I struggled to really get into this early, and so I think ultimately that's why I'm rating it lower. And there are also some character choices, I'm not gonna say what they are because that would definitely spoil it, that I did not enjoy, and so I just kind of wrestled with some of those characters, but that says nothing about the book or anything about the author's ability. It was just not my favorite. The next book I have is Vicious. So I just talked about Vengeful earlier, but Vicious, I didn't rank it at the time, and I should have. But looking back on Vicious, it would be 4 stars. So Vicious is really cool. It basically explores the topic of superheroes and superpowers and how we get superheroes. Like, it kind of explores what has to happen for someone to become a superhero. And so we follow 2 college roommates in a class assignment, and they basically decide, oh, let's try and become EOs or extraordinaries. And so we follow Victor Bale and Eli Ever, and it is a fascinating, fascinating story. We get a lot of tension, we get a lot of moral discussion between the 2 of them. Both Eli and Victor think that they are doing the right thing for the right reason, and so you get to see a lot of tension as they are going against one another. And it's also interesting to think about, because you're in the minds of both of them throughout the story, it's interesting to think about from Eli's perspective. Like, you get to see his thoughts, but then thinking about the public's opinion of him is like, oh, is he a villain or a hero? And so for part of it, I was like, okay, if I view Eli as the villain, maybe the public views him as a hero, because you have a little bit of insight into Eli, and then you don't really have the public's opinion. You kind of only have his biased thoughts. It makes you think a little bit both about how we ourselves think about the actions we're doing, and then also how those actions are being perceived by others. And same thing with Victor as well. You see his inner monologue and his inner thoughts and why he's doing what he's doing and why he's facing off against Eli, what his mental processes and his morals, and then think about how the public is viewing him. It's a fantastic story, and it makes you really think about things like that, and V. Schwab has a innate talent for that. Every single one of her books has some kind of moral or applicable theme that the reader can take out of it and apply it to their own lives, whether that be the choices we make and why we make them, morals and how we decide what we think is right or wrong, or even like what makes a monster a monster. Still unpacking that morality and gray area of action. That is all I'll say about it for now. Next, after this, we have our Dark Duet. I also gave that 4 stars. This is one of V. Schwab's earlier duologies. If I'm remembering correctly, it is about a family who would be considered monsters, and they are able to use musical instruments to kind of use their power throughout the city, and that's about as much as I can remember. But again, another really interesting, unique story. That is something that you know you're absolutely going to get with V. Schwab, and I think it was the second duology I read by her after I read the Archive series, which included Unbound, which I already talked about. But Our Dark Duet was the second in the duology, and then immediately following this in our list is This Savage Song, which is the initial book in the Our Dark Duet trilogy. Technically, it would be the Savage Song duology. I gave The Savage Song also 4 stars. It was a very inventive world. It held my attention the whole time. I really enjoyed it. It was just a classic, well-written, immersive story and world, and I loved it. I think, actually thinking back to it now, the main male character's name is August. And then I think the main female character's name, it's something super basic. Like, it's not a super like unique fantasy name that I know a lot of fantasy books have to have like this very creative, unique name because, you know, you want your character to stand out. I think her name was Kate or something like that, which I remember when I picked it up, I was expecting like a super unique name, and it was just Kate, which was kind of cool. I think it could make it easier for readers to connect if they see a name and they have a family member who has the name or a friend. So I think that was cool. So following that, also at 4 stars, is The Archive, which is the first book for the Archive series. Again, I talked about The Unbound first. I already kind of talked about the plot about this one, so I don't think there's anything really more to say here. I liked the first one better than the second one. It's still solid, like 4 stars. That's nothing to sneeze at. Is that statement sneeze at or sneer at? Because I feel like I've heard both, and I just kind of full sent it and went with sneeze at, but it might be sneer at. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Next on this list is Bare Bones in the Midnight Soil, which I gave 4 stars. This is V.E. Schwab's most recent release. And let me tell you, it was not a book that I would have picked up if it was written by any other author. So the premise is basically toxic lesbian vampires. Vampires are not a genre of fantasy that I feel particularly compelled to read. Like, I read Twilight in early high school and I watched The Vampire Diaries and I enjoyed it, but it's not a mythical monster or fantastical monster that I reach for often. However, it has V.E. Schwab on the cover. I knew I was gonna love it because I love all of her writing, and so I picked it up and I actually finished it. I wanna say I finished it at the end of July. Now, this book is fascinating because it follows 3 main characters and you're kind of getting their timelines interwoven together throughout the series. And it's a longer book. I think it's like 450 plus pages, maybe like 440 or something like that. And typically in books like this, where there's 3 main characters and you're seeing how they get to the point where they are all there and they're all interacting. So B.E. Schwab takes you through kind of like the history of how each one of them ended up there and unpacks their character and their character arc a little bit. There is minimal dialogue in this book, and it is not to its detriment. It just goes to show you V.E. Schwab's ability with writing and words and developing her world and the story and the plot structure. She is masterful at it, and this book was no exception. I think the story itself, like the plot and the conflict, wasn't my favorite of all time, so that's why I gave it 4 stars, but the writing is top notch. She knocked it out of the park like I absolutely expected her to, and it was a great read. I highly recommend it, especially for fall time, just because it gives you those gothic, eerie, toxic lesbian vampire vibes, if that is something you were looking for. I know one of my friends on Instagram is reading Twilight for the first time in this month, the month of October, because she wanted a fun fall read. So if you already read Twilight and don't want to reread it, and you still want vampires, pick up Bare Bones in the Midnight Soil. Number 3 on my ranking of all of the Schwab's books that I've read by her is A Darker Shade of Magic. This is the first book in the Darker Shade of Magic series, and it's fantastic. It is a great start. It is a great intro to the world, a highly complex world with multiple different ways the magic interacts with people, with multifaceted characters that you meet and grow and truly change throughout the story. It was a great intro. It had me hooked. I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know if I already said that. The covers are beautiful. I'm happy I got the new covers, but the old covers are similarly gorgeous and stunning. I'll probably put them here. But it's a great intro. It is a beautiful, beautiful world, and I loved it. And I mean, even in the book itself, you have like these cool chapter pages with like this art. It's stunning. The story and the book and the cover and everything. I struggled with this book a little bit, like in the tiniest sense, because I had such high expectations because I expected to absolutely adore it. And there were some parts of it that I was like, I didn't really like love that, but it was still fantastic. I just couldn't faithfully give it 5 stars. And then book number 2 on my list, the runner-up, if you will, is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is obviously the conclusion of the trilogy, and it is just so, so good, guys. Like, the way that every string is wrapped up and where we leave our characters, we see the sacrifice they have to make, to move the plot forward and to face the main conflict. It's fantastic, and I adored it. It is a chunky paperback, favorite kind of paperback. I love it, absolutely adore it, and there's not enough good things that I can say about it. And it makes me so excited because she's actually writing a spin-off series in this exact same world. I'm so pumped for that. So like I said earlier, I don't buy books that I haven't read yet or I have read but no, I'm not going to reread. But V.E. Schwab is one of my auto-buy authors, basically an author that whatever they write, I will read it, as evidenced by me reading Bare Bones in the Midnight Soil, even though the plot itself didn't appeal too much to me. And so because of that, and another pillar of my book philosophy being that I don't like to start series unless they're finished, I'm breaking like all 3 of those rules because I actually bought The Fragile Threads of Power, which is the first book in the spin-off series. I couldn't resist it. V.E. Schwab, like I said, she's an auto-buy author for me. I will read anything that woman writes, and so I had to grab it. But her coming out with a series has actually challenged my views just a little bit, particularly because I know that authors obviously need readers to buy their books and read their books in order for them to get paid to write the rest of the series. I might be changing my tune just a smidge for my auto-buy authors exclusively. So I think for my auto-buy authors, because I know I love their books and I adore them, and I will read everything they write, despite if the plot seems interesting initially to me or not. I think what I might start doing for my auto-buy authors only is actually start reading the series as it comes out instead of waiting until the end of the series to binge it. I know, a little crazy, but the more I've learned about publishing, the more I've realized that I really want to support my auto-buy authors because they are tried and true novelists who I just adore, and I want to be able to support them any way I can. And the first way I can do that is by, number one, buying their books before I read them, and number two, reading the series before it's finished. So that is all to say that this book is high on my TBR and I can't wait to get to it soon. I have to figure out when I want to dive into it because of all the other books that I know I want to get to as well, but it's high on the list and I can't wait to read it, and I can't wait for the second book to come out, which I think is also 2026. Maybe it's 2027. I'll have to see how big of a gap I actually want to leave myself between this book and the next one. So, and then rounding out this list with my number one favorite book by V.E. Schwab is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This book I gave 5 stars. It was one of those books where I read it at the absolute perfect time, and I just adored it and loved it so much. Obviously, I think there are places within it that it could have been improved, but the way this book spoke to me and just hit me at the perfect time, I could do nothing else except give it 5 stars. It was incredibly impactful, and the message that it sent to me at a time when I read it was just something I needed to hear, and I really appreciated it. And of course, the writing is stunning, the character relationships are stunning. Seeing Addie kind of go throughout her life and make the choices she makes is just fascinating. My favorite part about this book is how it dissects the choices we make and why we choose to make them. I think that is so needed, and it is just such a refreshing thing to read about because, we all have choices we make and we all have reasons behind those choices, but it was really insightful and cool and fascinating and just interesting to read about Addie and all the choices she's faced with and why she makes them. So this was a 5-star read for me, and this book is actually very special to me, this specific copy of it, because I bought it when I went on a trip to London last year. London holds such a special place in my heart. I just love the city. I think it's amazing and so cool. I could wax poetic about it forever, but I will spare your guys' ears. I actually purchased this book there, and so it's very special to me to have bought this in such a special place like London, and it to be one of my favorite books of all time. I try to buy a book in every new country that I go to. It's a fun little thing I like to do instead of collecting other keepsakes. The danger with that is that I only buy books I don't want to reread, so I have a very limited list that I can actually buy, so sometimes that means I break that rule, but very rarely. I try to really stick to my list. That is my ranking of all the books I've read by V.E. Schwab. Please let me know below if your rating is the same as mine, if it differs, what books you've liked over others, and what your favorite book by V.E. Schwab is. Also, let me know below if there's any book by her I'm missing. I know that she has a large collection of works, and I know there's a few young adult ones that I haven't gotten to, but I think the biggest one that I really need to get to next is The Fragile Threads of Power, so I am looking forward to getting to this one soon. If you've read it already, please let me know your thoughts. I'm so curious, I'm so excited, and I cannot wait. I'm going to try and keep my expectations level. However, it's a V.E. Schwab book. I know it's going to be amazing and phenomenal, even if it's not a 5-star book for me. It's set in such a cool world. I feel like it has to be done super well, so I'm hoping that I'm not setting my expectations too high, even though I feel like I kind of am, but is what it is, I guess. Also, please let me know if you guys enjoy these ranking videos. I really enjoy filming them, so if you guys enjoy watching them, that is fantastic because I have other ideas for other authors I would love to rank and go through. It's just such a fun exercise to kind of look back at all the books, buy some of my favorite authors, and just kind of go down memory lane. It's really great. I enjoy it. Well, thank you so much for joining. It was so nice to have you, and I will see you guys again soon.